Stage 4 is a third longer than the previous stage with a length of 115 kilometers. It is the longest stage of the competition. It's also a transitional stage between the provinces of Córdoba and Jaén. Starting with a street section, the riders would be relatively sheltered from the wind in the early going. However, they would want to stick with the peloton in order to avoid exposing themselves to the cold conditions. Nobody wanted to get too far away from the peloton for fear of leaving themselves open to the adverse weather conditions. The favourites in the peloton were the Czechs Budny and Hynek, who were in first place in the opening going. Also strong were the members of BMC Factor, plus their compatriots Martin Orak and Thomas Vokruig, who were waiting for the chance to attack. They headed across Via Verde, a space which was formerly a railway track and has now been converted into an area that gives the cyclists the chance to give their weary legs a bit of a rest. 60 kilometres long, it was a chance to relax their muscles before a climb to the finish. Orbea were out of the peloton, having decided not to start the stage, disagreeing with a decision from the jury on the previous day. After Via Verde came the last important climb of the stage. Christian Hynek was commanding the peloton with just a few kilometres remaining. The peloton featured neither of the teams currently dominating in the overall standings, Multivan Merida and Orbea. The Czechs led the peloton from BMC Factor, and at the rear of the peloton were members of Hispano Luso and Česká Sporitelna Specialized. Alejandro Díaz de la Peña of Hispano Luso overtook the rest of the peloton, and he and teammate Luis Leao flew off towards the finish in search of a win in the Andalucia bike race. They crossed the finish line first, having won a duel at the front with Czechs Budny and Hynek. We are very happy, because over the past few days we have had many problems, and yet we have shown that we are in good form. It was just those problems which prevented us from being in the positions where we really needed to be. Today we are very tired from the earlier stages, but we haven't had any problems. The Czechs came in second and moved up into first place in the overall standings. The Topic Ergon team had all but ensured victory in the women's class, making it 4 wins from 4 with another relentless performance. There were changes behind them, however, as the BC's Esteve team of Sandra Santañez and Isabel Castro dropped down to 3rd in the overall standings. They were overtaken by Jennifer Smith and Kathy Sherwin of the Stan's No Tubes team. Stage 5 was a comparative respite for the riders at only 63 kilometres. It was the first stage to take place exclusively in Jaén. That would be something that would suit 2 riders in particular, home competitors in this competition. Again, the stage started in the streets before opening up into the countryside. It would be local riders Manuel Beltran and José Luis Carrasco of the Sport Bike team who would take the early lead. Both riders are from Jaén and knew the terrain like the backs of their hands. They fronted the peloton, ahead of the Czechs from BMC Factor and their compatriots from Česká Spořitelna Specialized, the current leaders of the standings. The Hispano-Luso team were also involved in the peloton. Beltran and Carrasco continued in front as the stage started the climb up Sierra Magina. They were followed by Roberto Heras, now without teammate Marcos Serrano. Lagging behind were Budny, Heineck, Diaz de la Peña and Luis Leao. Sportbike broke away after passing the peak of Sierra Magina and moved further ahead on the descent. Sportbike was still in the lead and looked as if they were going to win their first stage of this race. They tackled the final climb before a final descent which would take them to the finish line. Shortest stage of the race, but also a fairly tough one. Some of the riders had no choice but to carry their bikes on their shoulders. The section simply too difficult to cross on two wheels. The pursuit group on the final descent, battling for second place in the stage, were the Czechs, and Beltran and Carrasco had confirmed the win. A first victory for the Sportbike duo, the local riders taking advantage of local knowledge. The shortest stage of the race, but still very tough, especially after what had gone on over the previous days.
We are satisfied and we're just trying to control the race and trying to control the gap. So we don't really have a reason to attack now, and on the other hand we are getting tired as well as everybody is, because the race is quite long, even if it doesn't seem like it if you look at the kilometers. But it's in the beginning of the season. First racing kilometers, so it's getting a bit long. So as I said, we're a bit tired, but we are trying to control it and keep it up to the final stage for tomorrow.
The Czechs were looking good heading into the final stage with an 11-minute advantage over second place Hispano-Luso. All barring a disaster would give them the overall win. The women's category also had an out-and-out leader, with Norgard and Bigham making it 5 wins on the bounce. The BC's Esteve team finished in second place and rose to second in the overall standings. The grand finale, Stage 6, would draw proceedings to a close in Jaén. Another area with a beautiful landscape, but also an immensely difficult stage for tired legs. The least flat stage of the entire race, 80 kilometres, awaited the riders on day 6. Once more they started on a street section before hitting the mountains. Beltran and Carrasco and the Czechs Budny and Heineck took the early lead and looked like favourites to win the stage. The Czechs all but assured a victory, barring a disaster. Stage 6 broke off into the mountains from the street section, with the Czechs and the Spaniards in front, Again, there was lifting to do due to the tough terrain in Jaén. This one of the most difficult and mountainous stages of the competition. Sport bikes dominated heavily in the previous day's stage, but found themselves chased by the Czechs of BMC Factor and Česká Spořitelna Specialized. Hispano-Luso also entering into proceedings. Beltran and Carrasco led the stage. They knew the area well, and it showed. Hispano-Luso broke to fight for first place with the sport bike duo, and it had started snowing. Very cold conditions indeed, as the bikers reached the peak of one of the highest mountains of the entire race, El Jabal Cuz. Plenty of contrast between this stage and previous ones in which there was much sun and much heat. Things couldn't be more different for the riders on stage 6. Hynek and Budny were following close behind the leaders, fighting for second, but not taking too many risks. Sportbike took on the final descent of the final stage in Puerto Pitillos, and the stage win was in their hands. They ended the competition on a high note in their local stage. BMC Factor, Hispano-Luso and Česká Spořitelna battled for second place in the stage. Diaz de la Peña and Luis Leao Pinto moved ahead of the Czechs to take the runner-up spot. Hynek and Budny's measured ride gave them the overall victory in the 2011 Andalusian bike race, exceeding their expectations. A victory for the Czechs in Spanish territory against some of the local favourites.
We are looking forward to take a rest now and to relax a bit, but we are very glad we came here, and it was a very nice, beautiful race, and I would like to thank to the organizers because for the first year to organize such an event, and I don't see any major mistakes they have made, so I think they have done just a great job, and we're glad we came here.
The Topic Ergon team absolutely ran away with the women's event, and they also won the final stage to keep up their 100% record. The Bicis Esteve team eventually finished the race in third, behind the Stans No Tube team. The winners decided then in the 2011 Andalusian bike race. All that was left to do was to clean the bikes and relax those tired muscles after a difficult event.